Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Wellness Policy. It is my privilege to be here. As always, I'm joined by my very good friends, Neal Flanagan and Jordan Goodman. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, very good friends. Wow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Wow. When did it go from good to very good way?
When I decided to have these words come out of my mouth for this introduction, so I
You
don't
hear that,
know if it
Neil?
was a conscious decision.
I feel like he said it before. I take note of these things.
I think we've been upgraded in real time today.
Hey Jordan, something occurred to me just then that has never occurred to me before, and we've done many, many episodes of this show.
Mhm.
During the Rosie was that tune, by the way,
Mhm.
people, that's one of Jordan's bands. Who's responsible for the electronica in that? The in the background. Here we
This
go.
so oh, I see. Yeah. So this song was produced just before I joined the band. So I performed the record release show, but I did not. So I think Charlie, the singer of Raindeer, probably did everything and mixed it.
All right.
And
Okay.
yeah, it was a Charlie project. Um,
We should pick a song that you actually were a part of, I guess. Should we change it?
From memory, 6 years ago when we started this way, I think I gave
6
you.
years. Wow.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think maybe 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget. You picked the song. You said I like this one.
Yeah, I guess so. I didn't realize. I mean, you own it now. Okay, forget it. Forget anybody else that may have come before you. This is your song now,
Well,
just because of the
Yeah.
podcast.
well, I think it's the wellness policy song now.
Yeah, it's our song. It's my song.
Yeah, it's your
I own
song.
it.
Your song. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So to answer your question, Neil, Wai was
Yeah,
responsible.
that's it.
Yes. Good.
Well, I love it.
Checks out.
All right, guys. Well, we are here, and we're about to talk about a topic that I'm kind of sensing might be like among the toughest that we have attempted to discuss on this particular podcast. But I think like the mission, Jordan, like for this sort of show has always been to maybe veer sometimes into uncomfortable subjects, in particular uncomfortable subjects that like men are kind of like not as often likely to discuss. And this is one of those, we're maybe about to like talk about one of the worst things that can happen to anybody, and that is experiencing the loss of a child. Again, not something that any of us, thankfully, like are any sort of like, have any experience in dealing with, but I'm sure there are many people who universally share maybe this very unfortunate incident. But we actually happen to have a guest who has tried to create some sort of support service for people who have gone through this. Tell us about our guest today, Jordan.
Yeah. Briefly, I'll just say, like, I've always looked at the wellness policy as a humanist podcast, essentially meaning, yeah, it's the culture of pro wrestling that connects us initially to each other and to the audience. But it's a humanist podcast, meaning that we're often discussing things that are part of the human experience, period. Sometimes that includes heartbreaking, tragic things. So part of the discussion will include that today. In addition to that, perhaps what can be constructed and created through the a shared human experience, as unfortunate as it may be with other people. Speaking of my musical life, our guest Rob Reider is someone I've known for decades, literally through music. About 20 years ago, bands I was in, bands he was in, we crossed paths many times. Rob went on to like fucking tour the world and be on MTV. He really did the thing. And during COVID, he and I reconnected, and for the first time in where we really got to know each other, and lovely fucking guy. I'm excited for you guys to meet him and for the audience to experience him as well. But Rob ostensibly is here to talk about his organization, Sad Dads Club. There he is, looking like the late great Brody Lee. We could say, I mean that as a compliment. Rob, Rob, do you know anything about wrestling?
No, I don't.
Cool. Well, you're in the right spot,
Yeah,
I suppose.
Great.
To learn a lot.
Yeah. You've never been curious about wrestling?
I've certainly been curious, and I remember setting up forts during, or I guess crash pads, like makeshift rings, and trying to replicate what was happening on WWF and WWE. But this is my long-winded way of saying I never got really into the characters. Never, it was entertaining. It was fun. But I am amidst those who my lack of knowledge would be laughable.
Well,
but as a kid, you did put your friend in a Boston Crab at some point.
Yes, absolutely.
We all did that. Yeah.
Yes. The people's elbow, I remember that. And
so you know what you're talking about here.
a little, no, so let's not go too far.
Okay. Like I'd imagine wrestling matches, maybe multi-man matches, when you used to tour with bands. It never got violent like that?
No, it was a pretty gentle genre that we were in. I mean, it was essentially led and spawned largely in part by All Time Low. So you can imagine younger audiences, softer type of music, despite distorted guitars, was still as kind of gentle as you could be. So not much machismo on those tours.
No one except you and I will know who I'm referring to, I assume. The singer from Valencia hated me because I once, quote, backstage in Altoona, Pennsylvania, I tried to have a ladder match with him without his consent while he was on a phone call. Yeah, I was very unhinged back then, and slightly less present day.
We all do things when we're young that we wish we could rewind, or rather we say, hey, I learned from that.
I suppose.
So
let's make a super hard pivot. Rob, can you tell us what is Sad Dads Club? Why does Sad Dads Club exist? If you're willing.
I would be glad to, and thank you all very, very much for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate any opportunity to share with an audience more about the work that we're doing at Sad Dads Club. And I will start with our mission statement, which is that Sad Dads Club helps fellow bereaved fathers navigate life after loss by nurturing a supportive community and providing access to mental health services. So in short, we provide grief support for fathers who have lost children, both non-clinical and professional. Prior to our formation, there is literally no other organization on planet Earth that provides comprehensive grief support for fathers in the wake of child loss, which sounds kind of like a ridiculous claim, but it's true. A lot of the attention has been put on for good reason. The birthing parent, there are a lot of resources out there for bereaved mothers. And I think just societally, generationally, fathers have fallen by the wayside due to the old mantra of suck it up or be a man or grin and bear it. And I think it's time to try something new when approaching grief so that we can help alleviate anxiety and depression and help create an outlet so that people realize I'm not the only one who this is happening to. And it's okay if I feel hopeless, sad, or I have to ask for help. It's very natural. I think that's the greatest sign of strength there is. I think it's a lot harder to move forward and process those feelings and connect with others who are going through something similar than it is to ignore it. If you ignore it, ultimately it's going to erode you from the inside. But that is, in short, what Sad Dads Club does.
Do you have a sense of how prevalent this is? Like what's in terms of statistics of how many pregnancies end this way?
I do have a current statistic, and I should mention that my particular loss, my daughter Lila, our firstborn, 38 weeks, everything was going completely normal. And all of a sudden we go in for an appointment first thing in the morning and there's no heartbeat. And so she was stillborn. We had to go into the hospital and deliver her. She looked just like a sleeping baby, only she had died. The statistics from the CDC around stillbirths in the US are, I believe, 1 in every 175, so about 22,000 annually. There is no statistic on the number of children or humans under the age of 18 who pass away in a year, but our organization is open to anyone who has experienced child loss. And I don't presume to understand the experience of losing an older or even adult child, but we really do focus more on the way that grief impacts our lives in all the different areas, with relationships, with careers, holidays, all that type of stuff. And that really becomes what helps there be no barrier to connection. It doesn't matter what circumstance or what you went through or what age your child was. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter. We say that's not a barrier to connection. So we do open our doors widely, though a majority of the dads in our community have experienced perinatal loss. And so we open our doors widely, but 1 in 175 births ends in stillbirth. I think 1 in every 4 pregnancies is a miscarriage, I believe, is the latest stat I saw. I should have refreshed my knowledge. But it's far more prevalent than I think people realize, largely because when you do endure this type of tragedy, people keep it to themselves. They don't talk about it. They don't have a lot of space where they can go to be expressive or process it. And that just sort of ends up with it being swept under the rug or swept aside. At least in the US, we live largely in this live, laugh, love. You know, we want all the good stuff. We want the celebration. We want the fun, the easy. And that's large part why oftentimes people's family or the ones closest to them can't be there for them in the way that they need them in the wake of child loss.
So then was that your experience when you went through that, in terms of not finding support that certainly it seems like you were inspired to create later on for others?
I interestingly, and this became the impetus for Sad Dads Club, was that I had a friend. We lost Lila. She was born December 13th, 2017. Small fact, she shares a birthday with Taylor Swift and Tom DeLonge. So very special day for special people. 11 months earlier, January of that same year, on January 31st, 2017, a friend of mine had a stillborn daughter at 41 weeks. I was the best man in his wedding. He lived with my parents in Maryland right after we graduated from college. We were both living in the Portland, Maine area. So I had someone that I could immediately go to in the wake of losing Lila.
And what was your experience with him as a close friend when he went through that experience first?
I had never even heard of a stillbirth or having a child be stillborn. When he texted me that they lost the baby, my first thought went to, did something happen in the delivery room where the child was dropped and fell on their head and experienced a traumatic brain injury? That was, I vividly remember thinking that because I just couldn't make sense of it. We had just dropped off food for them 2 days earlier, seeing that they were expecting their child any day now. And we knew that they were far along and that they had an older son who's almost 2 years old. And so being there for them as much as we could, I had a front row seat to how absolutely devastating that was for him and his family, how complicated it was, how unrelenting it was, because you have this child who was born, you have very little time with, you say goodbye and the world doesn't get to know them, but they're still your child and they're still such a big part of your life and of your family. But you go home to all this emptiness, to this nursery that's waiting for them, to this car seat that you have to take out. And so that was incredibly illuminating for me. I had not been through anything like that with a loved one in my life up to that point.
So just like having gone through maybe some, like, you know, like the whole process of like having a child, I was actually honestly quite shocked how little is represented when you're talking about certainly media or like fiction, you know, about the birthing process. Everything, especially like even conception, feels so, it feels like there's only one way of doing it. Like, you know, you're either like you know, at a maybe, you know, you're not trying at all, and then all of a sudden, oh no, like, you know, I'm pregnant. It's like it can happen that easily. And yes, for some it can, but for a vast, like, it sounds like a lot of people, it's actually quite the opposite. And then, like, you know, the sort of like complicated process of a birthing period, but the risk of birth, and like how maybe, like, you know, challenging the entire process is, and perhaps going through the toughest challenge of it all, like you have, Rob, and many of the people in the group. That is never depicted in media. That is never depicted in any sort of, like, I don't know, fictitious retelling of the birthing process. And that's like does it make it that much more shocking because you don't know that it's a possibility, or at least don't have that expectation?
I think so. I think that's why people often say it felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. There's just nothing that prepares you for that. I think even maybe if it is on your radar, being aware of it, there's still nothing that can prepare you for it. But I think to your point, Wai, that having it's so not talked about, it's so not represented, it becomes this thing that you don't even imagine. And it is like fictitious nearly. It's this thing that so few people know how often it happens, which means so few people are talking about it. And that makes it not that I don't presume that you can prepare for something like this, but when I talk to a lot of hospitals and give presentations about what it is we do, what the service is, what as a nonprofit we are raising money to support, they're like, oh my gosh, it's so great that there's finally something out there that we can give to the fathers as we're discharging these families. And I think back to the fact that Sad Dads Club is the only organization of our kind that is focused on comprehensive grief support for bereaved fathers shows that people aren't talking about it. People aren't addressing it. People aren't actualizing how common it is.
Yeah. I wanted to also ask, I mean, so it's wonderful that, you provided the space for fathers to want to talk about it, or to talk about it, but like, is it a challenge to that you found to like even get dads to want to talk about this after going through something like that?
Interestingly, so there was one other dad that we were introduced to through a friend of ours, a common friend, mutual friend rather, from our college in Maine, who was also living in the Portland area. Jay and I, who are two of the three co-founders, had never met him, but his wife went to school with us, and we heard that they had a stillborn daughter. So the three of us started spending a lot of time together and quickly realized how important it was to have one another as an outlet. Even in the moments where we were not together, it was so comforting to know I can text him. I can talk to him about this. I can say everything or nothing, and I don't need to explain myself. They just get it. And I think that it wasn't surprising when we started it that dads were showing up, and they kept showing up, and then more dads were showing up, and word was getting out, and it was growing very steadily and organically, because I think we had this, maybe it could have been, misplaced optimism to think that this is something people need. This is something dads want. I think generationally, maybe, as I think we're technically referred to as elder millennials or geriatric millennials, but there is more of an openness. There's more of a sensitivity. There's more of a willingness to be vulnerable. And maybe based on our own experience and seeing how this dynamic helped and keeping the barrier of entry really low by saying, hey, this is something that you can come to. You don't have to say anything. You can just come and listen if that's the way you feel like the space is going to most help you. And I think in creating that standard, it's what allowed people to come, to keep coming, and to know that if they came, they could show up however they were. So I think I was not surprised to see it grow. I think the three of us had a really strong belief in what the response would be based on how strongly we felt that it helped the three of us. And maybe, again, that was naive, but it did turn out to be that this group of guys who are largely within our age group were actually among some of the older ones, though we do have some dads who are decades and decades removed from their loss. They want something that they can go to. And I think they also want something that is separate from their partner, because they want their own space to process. They want their own space to talk openly in a way that maybe they wouldn't otherwise. And seeing it, the very initial kind of putting the call out, we just started a website and an Instagram and was like, share your story. We're going to do a monthly Zoom session that eventually evolved to weekly Zoom sessions, to a private Discord channel, which is active 24/7 with a lot of chats going on. We do in-person events, we do retreats, and now we also have professional mental health support. But it just became something that was, again, steadily growing. So I think that kept our fire burning brightly and kept us thinking, okay, this is working, and this is needed. This is what we suspected that it would be, which is filling a void that doesn't otherwise exist, which really does need to exist. I know that we support fathers, but the hope is that the entire family will benefit from having a space for these dads to come so that they can feel like their load is lightened a bit when they leave our space, whether it's through listening or sharing, that they can leave knowing it's not just me. What I'm feeling isn't crazy. And now I can return to other areas of my life a little more focused, a little more present, because I know I have this group of guys all over the world who have my back.
I'm wondering.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Neil.
I just was going to say, Rob, I think it's interesting to hear you talk about the generational aspect of this, that you're largely millennials. I think it's a bit of an indictment on our society that it's taken this long and to get to a point where you're the only group, or were the only group when you were founded, that dealt with this. Because I mean, I can kind of understand, or at least see as I look back, that perhaps Gen X, perhaps boomers, the idea was the birthing mum has been through the trauma and a lot of the physical trauma of it too, I guess, and the man's role then, the partner's role, is to be the rock
Right.
for her, but doesn't have that outlet to process their own grief. And I can only imagine, because I'm coming at this from a theoretical standpoint, that could push someone to breaking point. And so it's just a long-winded way of saying, it's a wonderful thing that you have done, and what do you see, what differences do you see in new joiners, after a while, do they begin to lighten when they see that you're having a bit of fun in some of these retreats, having a few beers, enjoying music, things like that? What's that journey like that you've observed?
There's a really good anecdote I have from one of our earlier meetings back when we were doing them monthly on Zoom. And this is when dads were starting to show up. We've been doing it long enough that relationships were building and forming, and even guys were texting on the side. Even they were in touch with one another. They were really deepening their relationships. And so we're signed on to Zoom. We didn't have we sort of have a formal beginning now where we put up a disclaimer, thanks to our lawyer's advice, and we have like some ambient music playing, and then we sort of introduce and open the room. But this was back when we're still building the ship as we push it in the water, but we were really like, guys were just signing on, side convos happening. And inevitably some guys were talking and ribbing each other about, sports rivalries and referencing things they thought were funny. And they were laughing. It was a very lighthearted kind of space. And I sort of pulled it back. It was like, hey, for anybody new, I see some new faces there. I don't want anyone to think that we don't take this space seriously, that this isn't something that, it's very sacred to us. It is, I was sort of trying to, I feel like, recover from being like, oh gosh, we're being a little too jovial, a little too casual. And one of the new dads unmuted and said, please keep laughing. I came here to see a future version of myself. Wow. And so I think that it's really important that we do show that, because so many new dads come in and you can see it on them. They're just wearing it, this weight of grief that is so, they look hopeless. They look completely resigned to the fact that nothing could help, that nothing that they are going to get here is going to help. The only reason they're here is because they punched a hole in the wall and their wife, their partner said, you got to do something. Here, I found Sad Dads Club. The number of guys who come in and say that is their partner who found Sad Dads Club and suggested it. And a lot of them do come in with like, I threw a glass against the wall, or I punched a hole in the wall, or I did something where it was like, okay, you need something. And we do now, in the very beginning of meetings, say, if you see people joking around in the chat, if you see anybody laughing or smiling, like, this is a space where we cover the full spectrum of emotion. And this is a space where we're going to laugh together, we're going to cry together, and everything in between. Laughing doesn't mean that we don't take the space seriously. Laughing means that this is proof that there is life left to live, that you will return to a semblance of what you used to know and get back into things that you enjoy. So many of these dads come in, and I remember this experience with music specifically. I've loved music. Again, that's how Jordan and I know one another. I love performing. I love listening to it. I love collecting physical music. And in the wake of losing Lila, there was just nothing there. Like, I would pick up a guitar, pick up drumsticks, and I couldn't do it. It was almost like subconsciously, I thought if something's going to bring me joy, I shouldn't engage in it, because sadness is the most intense feeling that I connect with Lila. So if I move away from that, that means I don't love her as much, which is such not the case. And music has since become something that I have an entirely different relationship now with, in that I connect with her when I'm creating. But these dads that come in with that same feeling of like, I don't even know how to do the things that I loved, being able to hear from a dad who's further removed and who has been dealing with this longer, and have them say, hey, I felt that too. Now, every time I go running and I put on my running shoes, this was an anecdote another dad offered. He said, I had the same problem. I couldn't go running. I knew it would be good for me. I knew it was my happy place. I knew it was healthy, but I just couldn't do it. And another dad chimed in and said, I had the exact same thing. And then I decided that every time I go running, I'm going to talk to my son, Nicholas. And that completely flipped the switch for that dad. And he now has a new relationship with running. And it's not about assuming or having the delusion that you're not trying to forget, you won't forget. You're not trying to, you can't move on from this. You can manage it. You can live with it. You can try your best to find a way to get as solid a grip on your mental health as you can, and increase your kind of, I hesitate to say savviness, but like your ability to manage grief. It's something that you learn over time that you can't rush. And we don't say, come to Sad Dads Club for 6 months and you're all better. It's something that's supposed to be there when people feel like they need it, where they can hear about other struggles as well as successes. And I totally went off whatever the original question asked was. I apologize. I have a penchant for wandering.
Podcasts are that's good for podcasts. So
I appreciate that.
like a lot of these methods, perhaps that like, you know, you're kind of leading these groups on, like how did you develop them? Are they sort of informed by maybe your own, you know, sessions with counselors? How did you kind of like create your processes? You know,
that is a great question. And I think that there are two really big influences that I draw from. One is that I grew up going to Quaker school. And so the whole ethos behind Quakerism, which is technically a form of Christianity, though it feels like its own kind of separate religion. I am not a religious person whatsoever, but having gone to Quaker school, the concept of community and that everybody has something of value to offer is huge, and that everybody is equal. Additionally, the music scene that I came up in with Jordan and this whole community idea, that's what it is. And yes, while I am the one who might be facilitating the space or opening the room, we make it very clear that this is a we space, that this belongs to all of us, that by showing up, we are contributing to the power of the space, and that we are the ones, we can't do it alone. I couldn't say, Chris J and I, the three co-founders, we have an idea for a community. It stops right there unless people show up. And beyond that, unless people keep showing up. So all the things that I kind of learned about going to a Quaker school, and then beyond that, being a part of a DIY music scene that was so robust and so thriving, and are still, as a side note, like my favorite bands to this day, Jordan's band included, Boy Crazy, shout out. Like that's my favorite stuff ever, because it was so, I was right there for it. And I saw these spaces, these communities being built with everyone chipping in. So that's how I lead or facilitate the space. I know that there does have to be a leader, but I don't see myself as above anyone else. I don't see anybody can pitch any idea to Sad Dads Club and we're going to try and do it. If a dad wants to, we always open it. Anybody wants to facilitate one of our Zooms, you can be the facilitator. Like we don't have any formal training or any sort of formal rules, with the exception of this is a sacred space. This is one that we respect everyone in, that like, you know, aggressive language or behavior has a zero tolerance policy here. Respect the stories of others, listen intently. And that's kind of it. And I think that just in creating those really pretty easy to follow set of rules has allowed people to come into the space, immediately understand what's expected of them. And the same thing I expect from myself. And I think bringing everybody into that makes it a really easy space to engage in, because everybody is so respectful of each other. And I think a lot of that also has to do with the reason it's a bit of a self-selecting community. I have talked to our board. 4 of the 5 board members, I'm one of them, are sad dads. And it's like, how do we keep getting this weight, all these, like a wave of new dads, and they're all great. And they're all so wonderful. It takes a certain type of person to say, I am going to go and get help. I do want to connect with other guys who are going through this. And that's a really vulnerable step to take. So while I don't have anything concrete that really informed the way that we facilitate, I think it is really just this ethos of, this is a community. This space belongs to all of us. And it can't be what it is. We can't do what we do. If you feel like this is helping you, it's because you're here helping it. We get what we put into it. And it's just been like this. It's one of the most harmonious spaces I've ever known. And it really does remind me of this magic feeling that I used to get with going to Quaker school and being part of a community there, being a part of a DIY music scene in the Baltimore, Maryland area. It's where everybody is contributing. And then it's something special that you feel a connection to that belongs to everyone.
I'm not surprised to hear you make the connection, because I think for some it could be perhaps jarring, if not confusing. The question was, how did you learn how to facilitate a grief support group, more simply? And you're saying in part it was my experiences being a part of a DIY music community and culture. And you and I are very alike in certain ways. I think the ways in which we engaged with our bands were similar. I think we maybe were able to see a bigger picture of the broader community, the different parts that fit, and maybe help take on some leadership roles within this. But not all music communities are similar. So the one that Rob's referring to, this is what, in the 2000s we'd call scene music, or like Warped Tour type bands, pop punk, emo, hardcore, things like that. And one of my, this is the experience that really helped me recognize that there was something about this particular music community that was different than others. So, coming up, especially in grade school, most of the bands that I got into, I heard on commercial radio. So most of these bands were signed to major labels, and when you go see them, the approach, I think, was creating this perception of a hierarchy that Rob is saying he would prefer maybe to level, even in Sad Dad's Club more so. But this hierarchy of rock star, the quote rock star is literally physically above the audience on the stage, creating this sense of their more untouchable, less access, and so on. And I knew local bands that were more part of those scenes and trying to engage in those scenes, where their relationship to the fan base, sure, maybe after the show they'll meet and greet, but it's behind their merch table, and perhaps only if the fan buys a CD for them to sign. And the intent, and I'm not saying good or bad, right or wrong, it's just different approaches, where if we appear to be less accessible, then others may perceive us as a bigger deal, or a quote rock star. The first time I ever went to Autobar, a small music club in Baltimore, I saw the band Fall Out Boy. Maybe 50-ish people there. They played like third of 5 bands that night. And Pete Wentz, the bass player, but has often been like the face or the front person of that band. He was at the merch table, not behind the merch table, in front of the merch table. And he came up to me and my brother and our friend and bandmate Brian, and he started a conversation with us. And to us, that was really novel and interesting, of like, oh wait, he's trying to befriend us. And it really changed a lot for me, because it was like, oh, this is way more interesting. And also, I think, a better way to build a fan base over time. I think the Pete Wentz way of socializing is very descriptive of what Rob and I experienced in this music scene. DIY, certainly, but it wasn't just all the bands. Like, other people in the community could step up if they wanted to be more on the production side or the promotion side or the venue or show operations side. It really was a community endeavor. And in the sense, everyone benefited. And also the sense that everyone was welcome. Don't be a fucking asshole. But like, be different, have your own, like, all are welcome as long as the intention is that we're contributing in a way that helps the community succeed. Rob, I would imagine, like, at the time, it was important for you to not just, hey, I'm going to go on stage and play my parts on bass guitar or whatever. But I'd imagine the merch table was of interest to you, not just because you were trying to make some extra money, but because that was another opportunity to build community with the fans. Does that resonate?
Completely. I would say even more so. Like, yes, I love performing, but the communal aspect to me was way more thrilling. It was way more interesting. It felt more like there was more longevity. That was more where I felt like I fit in. I am not by any stretch, or I'm not a seasoned musician. I'm not like classically trained. Someone could tell me a note to play. I'd be like, what fret is that on? Like, I love music. I love playing in bands, but I love the community component. I still to this day, I way favor smaller DIY shows than to huge productions. Like, the community component is what made it special. It's what made it something that everybody could have a part of if they wanted to. And as to use your words, as long as they're not a fucking asshole. And that filtered out this like utopia of people who had a similar goal, who had a similar vision, and who shared a passion. And in the case of Sad Dads Club, like, that's feeling better. That's experiencing relief while also honoring your child and remembering your child, who otherwise for the rest of the world is too afraid to bring up because people feel like it's taboo or they think they're going to remind you. And there is no reminding someone that their child died. You never forget. Some people are more willing to talk about it, but in very few other spaces, I misspoke. In no other space in life can I speak so freely, and in no other space in life do I have other people who actually know Lila in the way that they do. They know her birthday. They know the way that I spell her name. They tell me when they hear her name. They know what my symbol for her is. Her presence is amplified thanks to Sad Dads Club. And that goes with everybody's child. Like, we know the stories, we know the important days, we know the symbols associated. And that is why everybody comes together, because they want part of that magic. And that magic lends then to healing, which I think without it, if you're experiencing grief in an isolated sense, I think that's where it gets really dangerous. And I lend so much of the way that Sad Dads Club conducts itself to any community endeavor. Like, this is something that we all belong to, that we're all a part of, and that we can all contribute to make it stronger, to make it last longer, to help it reach more people. And in this case, the people who it reaches so desperately need it. And that's what our ultimate goal, whenever asked, is what's your number one goal? It's to make sure that there's no dad out there who thinks there's nothing out there for him in the wake of child loss. That doesn't mean that they know about us and they immediately come, because that shouldn't be the expectation. Not everybody is ready to step into a space like ours, especially in the immediate aftermath. We want people to know that worth and value isn't measured on how often you come or how consistently or frequently. It's like, it's a space to be there when you need it, and you need to know it's there. Whenever we close out a Thursday night Zoom, I always think about not the people. Of course, I think about the people who were there and the guys who shared, but I always think about the person who hasn't come yet, but they were about to, but they didn't really feel like they could yet. But they also knew, you know what, it's going to be there next Thursday. And that's what keeps us moving forward. It's like, this has to be the net to catch these dads indefinitely. This has to far outlive all of us. Like, this has to be something that people know, even if I'm not ready for it right now, I know it's there for me when I am ready.
Jordan mentioned, Jordan. Jordan mentioned hierarchy there, and Rob, you talked about one of your, very few rules being, respect each other's stories. And again, as looking at this from a kind of distance, And I hope this doesn't sound too blunt. You know, I hope this comes under there's no dumb questions here. I would imagine that, you know, someone who has lost a child shortly after or before birth, you know, I've not been through that, and it's got to be devastating. You talked about the stat near the beginning about miscarriage. Do you have members who perhaps, you know, we're not talking maybe the first few weeks of pregnancy, but later, where it's not an actual birth setting, and how do they come in feeling that there's somewhat less trauma? You know, they don't perhaps belong in the same bracket as you do or other, you know, and how do you deal with that? If you get my meaning, it's a fairly clumsy question, I have to say.
No, I think you articulated it perfectly, and I understand why and how it's not an easy one to articulate, and it's certainly not a dumb one. It's a really good question, and it is something that comes up, or rather that we get in front of, because when dads reach out to us through our website, there will sometimes be fathers who have experienced a miscarriage or recurring miscarriages and say, I read your website and I don't know if I quite fit in here. It's a lot of stories about stillbirth or a NICU child that didn't make it home or an older child. And we say what we always say, which is no one wins the grief Olympics. Like you will be met with warmth. You will be met with support. If you are struggling and your family doesn't look the way that you dreamed and imagined and wanted it to, then this space is for you. Like, that's a loss. And that's what we were talking about. I mean, that's why we kind of generalize like a loss. And if people ask, you know, what defines a loss, it is all of that. And it's fascinating to hear. It almost goes the opposite when I've heard dads, you know, respond to or address things. We have a dad who lost his son after an extremely long and horrible cancer diagnosis. And I went out to lunch with him. His son was, I believe, 19 when he passed away, but he was diagnosed around 2 years old. So, you know, 17-year battle with cancer. He lost his ability to see, speak, and walk. And he'd been coming to our meetings a lot. And I always saw him taking notes. And he told me, he's like, I want to remember people's children's names, their stories. I want to remember things so I can really internalize this stuff. And he's like, Rob, I feel so bad. Like, I got all these years with my son. And then I hear these stories of, you know, dads like you and other ones who didn't get any time with your child. They died right at birth or right before, right after. I was like, Steve, are you fucking kidding me? What you went through to me sounds like so much worse, like agonizing years, just torturous. So in the context of Sad Dads Club, it's almost like these dads are so fucking nice that they flip it to the inverse of what you think, where you think that someone would say like, well, mine is worse than yours. Like, oh my gosh, yours is so much worse than mine. Even when, you know, when Steve said that to me, I was like, I think yours is way worse, Steve. Way, way, way worse. But that's, again, no one wins the grief Olympics. And that's why I think when we get in front of that and we start our Zoom sessions by saying that this is a space where people have experienced all different types of child loss. And we are not here to say what is worse than the other. You can make your own personal decisions on that, but keep it to yourself, because that's not what we're here to do. We're here to support one another, and we are here to validate one another. And none of that can be achieved if we're thinking of who has it worse or who doesn't have as bad as I do.
Can I ask, Rob, like, what are sort of like the ways you maybe honor Lila at this point in your life? What are the sort of, you know, traditions or just maybe things that you do?
So every day I say out loud, I love you, Lila. That's usually the way I start every day. It's like the first thing that comes to mind, or among the first few things as I'm like regaining consciousness. So I go through that ritual of saying at least once a day out loud that I love you, Lila. And I'm always looking out for, this is related to her symbol. Embarrassing. Well, I think I do remember how we came up with the symbol between my wife and me. And we were in Hawaii shortly after losing Lila. My parents were already going out there for a trip. And this was 3 weeks after we lost Lila. And they said, you know, it's December in Maine, like it's cold, it's icy, it's dark as hell really early. They're like, come with us. It was the most like incredible gift to have been given at that time, to get out in the sun, be on the beach. Like, we're such a beach oriented family, and just to get out, change the scenery. Our house was so quiet and empty. Lila was our first, and there would always be these incredibly beautiful sunsets with this like apricot hue. And specifically when the sun would be setting and the light would come through the windows and land on our wall and create this, like, again, like apricot beam that became Lila's light. And that was something that we've always associated with her. So ritualistically, I always look out for that on any clear days of sunset. And that's things that other dads in Sad Dads Club will like send me a picture of their wall or their staircase. And they're like, hey, Lila's here. And I do create. I had never in my life like been a songwriter with music. My whole, as Jordan gave me that very flattering intro where I went on to do some extensive touring, that was because I hitched my wagon to guys who were far more talented than I am. I have always been like, I'm the soft skills guy. I like the networking. I like that community component. I've never been that into that. I guess just not that excited enough by an instrument to really pursue like technique or anything. Anyway, but so I've never done any of my own songwriting or anything. But now I got a little interface, and I've started doing this solo instrumental thing. There are just these very like plucky guitar parts overlayered with each other, and I'll sometimes collaborate, have a drummer play on it. And the idea in this practice is what helped get me back into music. It's like every time I plug in and play, and every time I'm fumbling on a guitar, like I am like, I mean, you watch me play guitar, it's like watching an orangutan with a guitar. Like, there's the strumming pattern is terrible. But I could come up with things I think sound really pretty and cool. And that is my way to like spend time with her. Like, whatever I'm playing then and there, whatever's coming out is like me deliberately putting the headphones on, setting up the guitar and the amp, and then playing to be like, I am thinking about you, whether it's a feeling of kind of, calm, even centeredness, whether it's like sad to overwhelmingly sad, or to just actually like joy and beauty. That's another way. But I think the biggest way of them all is Sad Dads Club. Like, I often remind myself, I mean, I have something right here that one of our dads in Paris made. It's an ornament, and he did this for any dad who wanted it. And so I have her name all over the place. And just to make sure that now I've been doing Sad Dads Club full time for almost 3 years. And it's like, no matter what you do for a living, you're going to get caught up in things that are maybe a little stressful, maybe a little frustrating. But I always want to zoom out and be like, what are you doing this for? Why are you doing this? And I think that being able to share her, I mean, we spent 3 days in the hospital with her before you had to say goodbye. And it's that, I don't even remember leaving the hospital. Like, I've been in therapy. I've tried to like dig into that memory, and it's a black spot. I have absolutely nothing. And I'm sure I have a strong feeling that it's probably some sort of defense mechanism, because it was painful to think like I'm leaving her alone. She is now gone. Like, that was the last physical time that I'll have with her. And I feel like through Sad Dads Club, like she is guiding me to meet all of these other dads, to know all of their children, to know that she has, in whatever ether or universe they may be sharing, I like to think that they're together, as heartbreaking as it is to now know that she has so much company. She is why I do this. And she has such a greater presence than she would if I weren't involved with Sad Dads Club, or I weren't doing this nonprofit full time. So in that way, she's kind of my North Star. She's always guiding everything we do. And every decision we make is based on like, will this help people who are in the same position that we were, who want to honor, remember, celebrate their child, while also knowing that life is there's a chance that it can return to a place of like happiness and joy and light.
In a very real sense. Thanks for sharing that, dude.
Mm-hmm.
You're describing like a very active relationship with her. this audience is familiar with the story of my dad dying a few years ago. Part of my struggle has been, and this was like an active process I was doing, not necessarily sharing this with my dad or anyone else at the time, but in his dying, I was trying to find ways to, for lack of a better term, spiritually connect with him, to feel a sense of connection. And that's been one of my bigger struggles of life in his passing. I'm wondering if dads come to your group and articulate something similar where they're trying and struggling to find a way to maintain a relationship that feels alive.
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest things I think people, when they've spent a little time in the group, when they've started to get to know other guys a little better and hear more stories, and especially engaging on our private Discord channel, there is a lot of talk about signs. There's a lot of talk about spiritual rituals that help you stay connected to your child. And a lot of dads are like, I don't see any signs, like it's just not going to work for me. And it's like, that's one of many ways that you can find a connection, that you can be reminded, that you can be deliberate about continuing that relationship with them. And it's really abstract. And so for a lot of guys who don't have any kind of inherent spiritual interest, it can be tough. But I think that the more they hear dads talk about it, the more ideas that they get that they can try and implement, even if it's something just like a lot of lost parents do this, where anything that's involving a name for like an order, if you go get coffee or if you go pick up something, like use your child's name just as an active way to hear someone else say it or to see it written. And that will kind of create this presence that then kind of inspires them more and more. Okay, well, where else can I find them? And that way I literally heard their name, and that way I literally saw their name. That's a physical representation. And I had kind of, I have no, it's hard because some dads, it's a little harder for them to crack. And I think that it runs the risk of trying to balance between, is there something wrong with me that I can't find that I can't do that? And the answer is, of course not. No, this is something. And then you hear some dads who are like, and this is why it's so interesting, or one of many reasons it's very interesting to have these dads who are also, I mean, some of them are 50 years removed from their loss and they just never had a community, and they will share ways that they make it a point to tell their living children stories about that child, or they make it a point to tell, even at this point, their grandchildren about this uncle or aunt that they would have had. And I think by continually hearing other things that other dads have done, it potentially inspires a dad to find a way that he can make that connection that he's desperately looking for. I'm so every other Thursday. So we do a weekly Zoom, and one is structured as just an open hour that we suggest a topic or a theme, whether it's, careers after loss or intimacy after loss or navigating the holidays or just a general mental health check-in. We have anybody who wants to can jump in, but on alternating Thursdays, we have what's called My Child, My Story. And that's where a dad opts in to share in long form the story of their child. And that's where the floor is theirs the whole night. We leave some space at the end for, words of support, but a lot gets revealed during those stories because the dad is just able to tell everything leading up to meeting their wife or spouse or partner, to then losing their child, to then ways that they found to honor or connect with them. And I know I'm sort of speaking in circles and not offering many concrete ways that people do connect, but one of the dads recently told us, this is good around our retreats, is that he sees our retreats as a vacation with his son, Augie, who passed away. And so this is like a trip that he is taking with his son. There is something truly like it's transcendent. And these spaces, when we're spending a weekend together, like a bit off the grid in nature, in the woods, in these beautiful settings on the water, like there is just this undeniable energy, and like, why you're there, what brings you there. And I think that you meet someone in life and you start here with them, but you meet someone who has also lost a child and you're just here with them. A lot of these dads are meeting for the first time, but then a group of them have also spent a lot of time together. And I think finding a dedicated space where you can just really connect with your child and hear about other children, that has done a lot for dads who are kind of looking for that place or that ritual. And even if it's something that only comes, twice a year, those opportunities have been really powerful. And we've heard from dads who maybe have not been able to find that thing on their own, that, wow, this space is something special because there's 25 dads from all over the country who are here for this exact reason. And you can be sitting and talking around a fire. You could be out on a canoe in complete silence alongside another dad, and you just get it. It's remarkable. It's profound.
Sounds
How
like
have you?
you're simply offering a space for people to just like dig into a part of their brains that is otherwise being repressed. And I would even suggest, even just as a, like, for any dad, I think there's just so much in there that doesn't really have that sort of outlet, and you're providing, probably a space for like the toughest parts of that whole side of things, to be able to come out amongst peers.
That is so true, that like you just don't have that space or time where we're in such high demand, as I hesitate to use the A word, as adults. We have to so much is expected of us. There's so much to keep track of. There are always places to be. There are always things to do, things to remember. This is like an unplug from all of that. So I think that that's a really like poignant way of putting it, that you really can just dig in a setting that is designed exactly for that. And how else, where else, when else can you get that?
How have you gone about? I'm really curious, like curating the retreat experience. Like, is there is it like a warp tour where there's multiple things to choose from at once? It sounds like everyone has the freedom, attend what you want, go take time to do your own thing if that resonates as well. What was the process, and how have you gone about iterating the menu of offerings and the structure of these retreats?
That's a very interesting question, and I hope this answer isn't super boring, but we've intentionally not put an emphasis on formal programming for the retreats. And that's not a way of getting around, one more thing to do or list of things to set up for dads. It's partly because we want to adhere to what we say to what we say to every dad, which is come and engage in the space however you feel you are most comfortable. And we know that we can't then say, everybody sit around the fire and we're going to introduce ourselves and say what happened to us. We do an informal introduction when we're all there on the first night. And then on Saturday night, we have started implementing one structured activity that, again, is optional, where dads will be given paper and a pen and they can write a letter to their child. We're all going to then sit around the fire. And if you feel moved to share, you can share it. And at the end of when everybody who wants to is shared, we throw it into the fire together as a ritual. But we felt like the first retreat we did was in October of 2023. And I had left my previous full-time job to do Sad Dads Club full-time like 2 weeks before that. So I had been planning it simultaneously while having the full-time job at the Children's Hospital here in Maine. And I was like, I don't have time to come up with programming. Like, I don't even know if this is going to work. So in the beginning, it was like, I just ran out of time and I couldn't really think of something that was going to necessarily resonate or be right. And it being the first time was like, let's just see if this works. And then I will be informed with how we change things. And it was like, it was instant. Like when everybody showed up, and this first group, these guys had gotten to know each other online through our Zoom sessions and through our Discord channel pretty well. But it was instant. And it was this just spark that has happened every time since, where everybody gets together. It's just this like, whoa, okay, here we are. It's this immediate comfort. It's this immediate willingness to be open and to be vulnerable and to just soak in being with one another. So there's always these water activities. There's always, we get a lot of food and beer and soft drinks and snacks donated. And so guys can kind of do with it. We started when we're in Maine renting a pontoon boat. And so we kind of take rounds around the lake, and it just kind of works. And I've seen a lot of other grief retreats just in my kind of, informational research, gone on to see that they're super structured. Like every minute of the day has some activity that you are expected to participate in. And it just doesn't feel like that's going to be what works for us. And so far, I always send out a survey after to see what sort of things people want more of or what there wasn't enough of. And people like knowing that they can come, and in every moment, if they have to step away, they can step away. If they want to be with a group of people, they can be with a group of people. And I think for us, at least for now, that just works.
Rob, the work that you and your group does is incredible. And it's obviously, from what you've told us today, incredibly fulfilling and healing for you too. But I do wonder, how do you protect yourself too? Because in some ways, and this is a guess, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, you're continually hearing stories that echo one of the worst experiences of your life. And I've got to think that there's some emotional exhaustion involved in all of this as well. Is that a fact? And how do you cope with it?
I've not figured out a way to cope with it necessarily. I find that my burnout is more in just this really intenseness that I have behind wanting everything to go right, wanting it to grow in the right way, wanting to make the right decision, and obsessing in that way. I think this is just something that is just part of who I am. Like, I have the capacity to just sit and hear it. And it affects me, of course. Like, there's some nights when I'm hearing stories, like I am right there with it, and I am visibly crying. And there are some nights where I just feel very like centered and calm. And that's not to say that if you're crying, you're not centered and calm, but I'm not as emotionally vulnerable or expressive. That part of it is not hard for me for whatever reason. I do have a living son now who's almost 7 years old, and he came after Lila, and we went through infertility and had to go through IVF. So there's that whole component too. Mm-hmm. And I hearing stories about losing, older children, because Lila was a newborn when she died. And like, those stories are very hard, but I also feel like crying ultimately feels good. Like it's so intense, especially when I hear stories about a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old and someone, but I'm like, but this happened to this guy, and this space where he's actually able to tell it, that makes me feel like I don't shy away from it. I don't think that my exhaustion stems from that. It stems from being the sole full-time employee of a global nonprofit at this point. We've luckily started to get some part-time contracted help thanks to like awesome fundraising results last year. But it's just the burnout of being the one who it's everything. Like, if something IT goes wrong, I have to figure it out. If somebody needs some information programmatically, like, I have to give it to them. If a hospital needs a presentation, I have to do that. If a new dad is reaching out through our website, I have to respond to them. And so if we're getting ready for a fundraising campaign, I front to back have to have everything set up for that. And that's, I think, where my wife has been like, okay, so I got you this Airbnb and you're going to go away for the night so that your nervous system can reset. And it was sort of go for like the first 2 years. And then I started being like, whoa, okay, I am actually starting to realize I do have a limit, and that I am not doing myself any favors by trying to push past that and ignore it. But I think if we had more staff, it would be a different ball game. Still be stressful, but the stories part, I feel like that's kind of part of the magic for me, is a dad opening up and telling that, and also seeing what I realize is, or what I've noticed is, a lot of dads, after they tell that story, after they are able to share, whether it's in the long form, My Child, My Story, or even just in one of our weekly Zoom session open hours where they decide like, I feel compelled to speak, not obligated, but compelled. That's where I'm like, yes, this is working. This isn't something that we're going out there and saying, because being a nonprofit, I spend a lot of time asking people for money. And I'm not asking people to invest in something that I think is an idea that might sound really good and it might work. This is working. This is alleviating anxiety and depression in dads. It's offering them relief. And I always lead with saying that relief should not come at a cost. And that's like part of what we're committed to, is not only this non-clinical component of what we do, whether through our Zoom sessions, our Discord, our retreats, our regional events. We also partner with therapists who specialize in grief and have experience treating patients who have lost a child, and we pay for up to 6 sessions. So we're trying to be really deliberate in partnering with therapists who we know are best suited to treat these dads for what they're going to them for.
From memory, professionally, you were doing a lot of fundraising before, yeah?
Yes. Yeah. I had been doing development for almost 10 years.
I'm just sitting here appreciating how so much of your life experience set you up to make this thing a reality and a successful one at that. You mentioned soft skills earlier, maybe being more of your strong suit over like the musical skills in what you could offer a band. I'm on a small mission professionally to rebrand the term soft skills. They're fucking people skills. And like everything we do involves people. People are the point. So people skills, I think, are sometimes the most valuable of skills we can bring to any endeavor. And the way you're like, even just the branding of, because I had the privilege of being in regular contact with you as this idea was generating, and the branding of Sad Dads Club, the communication and marketing of it. I went to your website, like there's a whole fucking press and media page that I was unaware. Like it's impressive. Like you've lived all the managing people and events and projects. Like this is all stuff you've done in bands. And then as you progressed in your career in different ways, you've developed a whole set of skills and experiences that in many ways very much directly transferred to this project you're building now. Does it resonate in a way where this feels like a culmination or a what was that? Did I just hear music?
Sorry.
Playing?
Yeah,
Oh.
I had a clip playing in the background. Apologies.
Love it. Is what I'm saying resonating, Rob?
Yes.
Because it really feels like what you're doing is almost tailor-made for what you can offer.
It absolutely does. It feels like that. And back to the mention that you made when we were in regular contact, like I very deliberately and desperately needed help professionally and beyond professionally, just life. And I went to Jordan for coaching because I felt I was so unhappy in what I was doing professionally at the time. And when I thought about the amount of time that I spent doing what I do professionally and how incredibly empty it felt, it just didn't make sense, but I didn't know what to do or where to go. I love your mention of rebranding soft skills as people skills as people. That's the point. You hyper focused on, and we drilled in on what I have experience doing, life experience, professional experience. What's in my deck is what you said. Like, what cards do you have? That completely changed my outlook. That completely changed the way that I approach what do I want to do next. I think I was in this cycle of like, well, you know, I was in a band that got signed to a big label and we had a cool opportunity to tour for about 3 years, but that's over. So now I went to a good college. I got a degree. I need to go into like corporate America. I for some reason just had that mindset and I just couldn't get anywhere in corporate America. Not because I didn't understand how to do my job. I did my job. I did it well. I never missed deadlines. I didn't miss goals. I exceeded goals, but I just could not climb the corporate ladder. And it was just like, what the fuck am I doing? What is happening? And our conversations over the year and a half ish completely changed the way I looked at myself and what do I want to do, and what more so, what can I do, and what's going to make me feel good about what I'm doing? Because I sure as hell was not doing what I was doing. It sure as hell was not making me happy doing what I have been doing, which is working in these sterile, big organizations that didn't give a shit about the people. I got treated like shit. That's why I just, the skills that I learned while I was in development at 2 different organizations where I had horrible professional experiences, I'm glad that it gave me the experience in fundraising, because asking people for money is inherently uncomfortable and very few people are able to do it. And I'm comfortable doing it, but even more so, I think I'm comfortable doing it with Sad Dads Club because it's such a personal mission. But when you told me to consider like what I have in my deck, I was like, oh yeah, that's my deck. This is what I have to offer the world. What can I? And that's where the belief in Sad Dads Club really came. And we were talking about, I remember even, oh my gosh, what a memory that just came flooding back. As we were talking about the name Sad Dads Club, originally it was Sad Dad singular club. And I was like, Jordan, what do you think? And instantly you're like, Sad Dads Club, it has to be plural. I was like, of course. I remember like so vividly, like the feeling of the phone against my ear and like where I was when I asked you that exact question, and conceptualizing this thing that I was like, hey, I'm really excited by and jazzed up about it. You were again telling me like, you can do this. You think about all the cards in your deck. And then once you made it clear that it should be Sad Dads Club, then it was just off and running. But that really, those were like that was like the incubator phase of, I have this idea, I have this thing. There's a real void in the world when it comes to an area where dads can come in the wake of child loss to get comprehensive grief support. And you were right there encouraging me and framing it for a way. Cause again, it was like, oh, there's so little stability. Like I have health benefits now in my current job, and how could I possibly leave it? But those conversations were like paramount in bringing me to taking the jump and doing this full time. And you've watched even before it started, like you were talking to me about it. You were supporting it. You were understanding of its importance and saw that like this was something that I was excited by. And in everything I was describing sounded like, I think you could do all that. I think you have all of the administrative skills, all of the people skills. This is a community. It's going to have to be a place where people at their most vulnerable feel like they're welcome, feel like they belong, and that they're going to be met with kindness and warmth. And God, what a memory to have come flooding back, that like pluralization, but it was such a big deal.
I forgot about that, but as you reshared, even the deck as metaphorical language that instantly comes to mind. Easy for me at that time, this is 5 or so years ago we're talking about. Easy for me to have conviction, knowing you and knowing your experience and knowing what cards you had in your deck to play with. In part easy for me because I didn't have to do the work. You like it was on you to actually do something with the potential that I recognized. To be honest, and we haven't really stayed in regular touch during that time. I didn't realize this is your full-time gig now. Like you fucking are making it happen. You've made it happen. I hadn't looked at your website in a long time. I did yesterday in preparation for this. I didn't know you're getting featured on CNN and things like this. Like, attaboy, man. Like, way to fucking go. Amazing.
I thank you. And again, as I say, and will continue to, like, what makes it amazing is these dads who show up and keep showing up, and new dads who are willing to walk through that door. Like it was an idea. It was an important idea and a good idea that Chris J and I, and also my wife, because she was hugely instrumental. And I mean, she's the one who pushed us to have a retreat. She found the house. She pushed us to have our first West Coast retreat. She found that house. She was the one who first said Sad Dad Club. So she is hugely, hugely instrumental in the growth and in the vision. It doesn't happen without everyone. Like that's what makes it a space where when new guys walk in, they're not alone and they're met with like this energy, they're met with this warmth. And it's really exciting to see it grow. As heartbreaking as it is, the reason that people need us, we're so glad that they find us. And I talk to, there's a constant anxiety and stress around like, okay, well, like, yeah, I'm getting paid now, but like, what if everything changes tomorrow? But it's like, I can't fucking control tomorrow. No one can. Right now, the ship is flying. We have so much more work to do. I couldn't possibly be more motivated, more inspired to do it. And that's because of all the dads who are contributing to it, who believe in it, who have made it what it is. It's because of Lila. And that is such an anchor to just like, I'm so steadfast. Like I will never stop doing this. I can't. There is no possible other. I've never done anything that's made me feel so fulfilled. And I know that sounds selfish, but I think being selfish is also important a lot of the time. Because I know that no matter what I do professionally, it's going to stress me out to some degree. So whenever a stressful thing comes up with Sad Dads Club, I'm like, what would I would rather be, there's nothing I'd rather be stressed doing than Sad Dads Club, because it is so important and it's so meaningful. And if selfish is equated to this is genuinely and personally in your self-interested, meaningful to you, like this is part of what helps sustain something like this over a period of time. Because work is work, and there's hurdles and responsibilities and stressors and sometimes budgets, etc. But what's the gas in your tank that keeps it going? And I think this is what we're pointing to in your language, selfish, but yeah, because this is truly meaningful work and a path of life for you. Yeah.
With that in mind, what do you envision for the future of Sad Dads Club? What are you working toward? Because it does shock me that you're saying like there aren't other groups that you're aware of doing something like this. Maybe some have been inspired or others have naturally come about since you founded it a few years ago. Sadly, there will always be future potential members to join such a group. Again, this is like a people thing. And if there's such little opportunity or access or just organization for these types of experiences for guys out there throughout the world, it seems like the possibility is whatever you choose it to be.
We need more retreats. We need them more frequently, more geographic diversity for where they're hosted. We've just formalized our first 5 local chapters so that we can start doing regional events. We need more opportunities for these dads to be together in the same space. Virtual is incredible. It's amazing. I love technology for the fact that it allows our reach to be boundless, but there is nothing that compares to getting people together in person. And so we've formalized 5 local chapters, one in the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia, Texas, Southern California, New York City, and New England. And so the hope there is that we've had dads raise their hand who've been with us for a while. They are going to be the local leaders of those chapters. And we're going to formalize starting with quarterly events and growing from there. And I think that if I were to wave a magic wand and be like, what do you what do you need to get to where you want to go? We just need more staff, and that's a matter of more funding. And so that's easy. There's money everywhere, right? All I got to do is go out there and ask for it. And I do kind of approach it as being, I'm not quite that glib about it, but I am. That's just what we have to do, because that is the only thing keeping us from doing more of what we're doing. And that's not to say that we think we've figured out everything and don't continually try to find new ways to meet dads where they are. For example, a dad of ours in Colorado Springs, who's an incredible guitarist and singer, came and said, "Hey, Rob, I wonder if we could do some sort of music therapy thing online once a month. Like, I have found that music is a really powerful way for me to process grief. And we could have dads sign up and they can share whatever they want, whether it's visual art, music, or we can have dads just coming and watching." And we said, sure, let's do it. So we started doing it. And like that, that's another example of like, this is a community. I can't think of everything. These guys are contributing. The local chapters, it's something we kind of had in our mind, but right after our first California retreat, one of the dads came to me and was like, "I'd really like to formalize something in Southern California so that I can like bring more dads together more often." And it's like, this space is all of ours. We are always going to think of other ways that we can meet dads where they are and do whatever we can to create an easy entry point. But it's also in the broad sense, we just need more staff to help us achieve more of what we're doing. But we'll get there. And I think that with the professional mental health component, we have about half the country covered in terms of therapists who we're partnered with. And by the end of this calendar year, our goal is to have a therapist in every state. And right now, just for budgetary reasons, we can only pay for 6 sessions per dad. I would like to see that we can pay indefinitely. If a dad says after 6 sessions, you have the opportunity to have 4 more, after that 2 more, after that 5 more, whatever. Like 6 is, according to a lot of mental health professionals, the average number that a patient will need to start to feel that the foundation of healing is forming, that they're going to be equipped with tools to help them cope in healthy ways. Some will need more, some will need fewer. I would probably personally need more than 6, but I want to just see more of what we're doing, and that it comes down to funding, which is equal parts like, well, that's simple. You just got to fundraise more. But it's also like, you got to fundraise more. You, one person. Although our campaign last year, we actually used an ambassador system. So we had 30 other dads say like, "Hey, I'm going to tap my network." They set up their own fundraising page through a site called Cause Match, which was super cool. It had like the oh, we were this close to goal. And so they could have a personal goal, and then we had a big campaign goal. And so even with fundraising, like, yes, I am, as the executive director, doing it every day to some degree. But certainly having the willingness of other dads to kind of open up their network to us is only going to help, because now, we had over 800 donors for the last campaign that raised over $138,000. And so that was great. But now this year it's like, how do we go even farther beyond that? Okay, let's get more ambassadors. Now I'm just getting into the ridiculousness and the psychoticness, yet simplicity of fundraising.
But in bands was part of the joy for you. It certainly was part of the joy for me, figuring out like how to spread the word.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So again, it's like you're exercising well-used muscles. For a new project at this point.
Totally. It's kind of wild. I mean, even like, look at the Sad Dads Club logo. Like, that is just like what is like someone was quoted as saying this, where, a great band logo is one that anybody should be able to draw in under 2 seconds on a bathroom wall. Like, that's exactly where that came from. That, and a combination of my lack of visual art skills. Like, I'm not an artist, and I was trying to draw the logo and have on the same graphic, like the Sad Dads Club, the way you see the words, and I couldn't get the framing right. I was like, oh my God, what is going on? I can't get this right. So then I just cut out the words and I put them down on a piece of paper. I took a picture of it with my phone, and that is the logo you see now. Like, it's
perfect.
Well, thank you. It's like I just work with what I got, and that is, again, going back to the the band days of like, well, what do we have? What resources do we have? How can we make this happen? We know what we want to have happen. How do we do that? And I was like, I can't get this framing right. I'm just going to cut it out because it doesn't have to be perfect, because perfect is an illusion and it's more charming anyway, I think, to be. Yeah. And now, guys have this logo like tattooed on them. And
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
I have it on my arm right here. And so other guy, you can't see it.
Yeah.
A little guy right there.
Amazing.
But yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, Rob, I really appreciate just like how comfortable you seem like talking about these topics. I imagine it's still not easy for you to dig into all of this, but like the way you are able to, I think so, I don't know, eloquently like discuss a lot of what you have gone through. I'm sure that alone is probably inspirational to some people who are hoping to maybe get to that stage at some point. We do have a few people who are in our live chat, and one person who was actually just listening who sent me a private message who want to maybe contribute to some of the discussion here. We got Spencer here who says, this is a tough conversation to approach. My mom dealt with this before I was born, and it's always a very rough conversation whenever we have sat down to talk about it. I suppose like I do have a question about that, like how do you perhaps approach all of this with your child? I don't know the name of your other child, but what is his relationship or her relationship like with Lila?
Yeah, my son, his name's Dallas, which is my middle name. It's also my mother's maiden name. So Dallas is about to be 7 years old, and he was diagnosed with autism when he just turned 3. And he was nonverbal until he was 4 years old. Once we got him into a specialized program for children with autism, it like flipped a switch with him, just that individualized, specialized support. He has made up for lost time. He has gone from being nonverbal to hyperverbal, which is another something that is not uncommon for kids or people on the autism spectrum. So before he was speaking, it was kind of, I was almost mourning the fact. I was like, I don't know if he ever will speak. He's too young to know. And I always imagined him talking about Lila and us talking about her together and hearing him say her name and really knowing that, just sharing ways that like him communicate. And there are ways beyond verbal articulation to communicate. I know that well and good, but I very openly talk about Lila to Dallas. I want him to know that he has a sister, and I want him to know that his sister is a part of our family and someone who we love. And I think that my wife and I were always very aligned on that being something that we wanted to do again. And just, we have to create her presence because she can't do it for herself. If it isn't for us, then the world won't know her. The world will forget about her. And so we are her voice in a way. And it's now so fascinating that it's got to a point where he is picking up on signs and symbols that he's made of himself. Like he'll see heart-shaped things on just like a rock or a piece of paper as we're doing art that cuts out. And he's like, oh, that's from Lila. And he's talked about like things where he's, gotten in not trouble, but he's been a little mischievous. He's like, no, that was Lila. That wasn't me that did that. And so he's like used her as a scapegoat. We did get a note from his teacher last year. He just finished kindergarten, so he'll be going into first grade this fall. And he was in a mainstream school. He, for pre-K, was in a specialized program at a school just for children with autism. And he one day got super emotional and was crying. And his teacher was asking him what was wrong. And he's like, I'm just really sad because I miss my sister Lila and she died and I'm never going to see her. And we got that email, my wife and I, from his teacher. We're just like, damn, because he's asking a lot about death, a lot about like, when am I going to die? When are you going to die? Just stuff that kids ask about. And he knows that his sister died, but he doesn't really understand why. We don't really understand why either, because it just, placental abruption, but like, what the fuck? How shouldn't you have caught? Anyway, it's different for every family too. Like, I would never presume to tell somebody what the right way is or how, because my wife and I were so eager to be there with him, eager to tell him about it, eager for him to say Lila and to know that his sister's name is Lila and to understand that he has a sibling. So that's just right for our family, because my wife and I felt very aligned on that. And I know can be much more complicated for other families, especially if maybe it's just not something they talk about often. It might be too painful and they don't feel equipped to go there, which I would understand.
Mhm.
Not that, and not that I need to understand it. Like, it's not my place. But for us, it was really important for us that she had a presence, that she has a presence in our family. And so a big part of that was making sure that Dallas, her younger brother, knew about her.
I also have a comment here from Strasraw, who says, "Thank you guys for bringing the subject up. I lost my third born on January 13th, 2000. Even though I am fine now, it was difficult then. It's great to have an outlet to talk about grief. It helps with healing." So, yes, I believe this is actually the same person who sent me a message, maybe further elaborating on this. He says, "I wish I could call in for this topic, but unfortunately I can't at the moment. Use this message on the podcast if you want. The loss of a child is hard for everyone. I can imagine what a woman goes through, especially carrying the child, but men are definitely as well for the stereotype of, quote, supposed to be strong and, quote, being the man. I lost my son Adam on January 13th, 2000. Lori was full term and similar to Rob and was still born. Even on the way to the hospital, it was a bad snowstorm. Lori and I went in a ditch and had to take a cab to the hospital. Lori had an extremely hard time, and so she should have. Even after the birth, she didn't want to let him go. She even stayed a while in the hospital due to her mental state. Due to her state, I had to make sure she was okay. Set up the burial/cremation before she got home, take the crib, etc., and all of Adam's stuff down. It was a whirlwind. I was sad, not just for losing a son, but for the state of Lori. I was lucky I had other children to look after. I was lucky I had great friends. It made Lori and I stronger. I just know, though, I always have an angel up there looking out for me and his brother and sisters. Thanks again." And he sent me a photo along with a donation to Sad Dad's Club. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much. And I'm thinking of Adam, man. And please, if you ever feel like you want to come and talk to a group of guys in whatever degree of detail or anything, please reach out to Sad Dad's Club. Reach out to me directly, Rob at saddadsclub.org. I'll get you all set up with a Discord link and register for our Zoom. But just thank you very much, man. I'm thinking of Adam.
You know, he does mention, like, I think, like, the burden, I think, like, men might choose to put on themselves in worrying about others first, you know, whether it be your children or your wife, before putting yourself ahead. And you're giving us permission to, like, spend time on ourselves, which I think is really, really important.
It's fascinating as men. I think that, again, going back to whatever stereotypes historically, generationally, and also similar to to Adam's dad, who just tuned in and sent the message, I also felt this immediacy of like, I just lost control. I need to regain control. What can I focus my attention on where I can control something? Oh, my wife, who just had a surgical procedure and who is now going through delivering, and I need to focus on her because she is here. I lost control with Lila. I can regain control with Tehila. That's my wife's name. And I can focus on making sure that she's being cared for, that she's going to be better. And that's a way of also putting aside my grief for now and just regaining control, because I felt so much so that I had lost it. And man, woman, alien, whatever, like, the loss of control is really uncomfortable.
Saddadsclub.org is where you can find more information and make a donation and maybe get involved. Any other places that you would recommend, Rob, for people to perhaps find those resources?
Yeah, our Instagram is certainly the most utilized of our social media. The handle there is sad.dads.club. And you can reach out via DM there, or you can reach out to me directly, Rob at saddadsclub.org. There's also a spot on our website, saddadsclub.org, where you can reach out. Those get filtered directly to me. So I try and do my best to respond in a timely manner and get anybody resources that they need as quickly as possible, so that I can get them integrated into the incredible community that we have that's continued to grow. And as we always say, we hate the reason you're here, but we're glad you found us.
Worst Club, Best Guys.
Worst Club,
Wonderful,
Best Guys.
wonderful little tag here. So we will have all those links in the show description, of course. And Neil and Jordan, any further thoughts, final thoughts?
I just want to say thanks to Rob for being here and for being such a great communicator through all of this, and to show people, perhaps at the beginning of this journey, that you can have some, maybe not, you can be made whole again, sounds like a horrible cliche, but you can heal.
Yeah.
And you know, you're living proof of that. And I think that's really valuable for our audience.
Neil, like I told you, he's a good communicator. When I pitched you, Rob, Neil was like, "Who the fuck is this guy? I don't know."
He's lying. He's lying.
I think what Adam's dad shared with us, you know, first in the chat on YouTube and then privately to Wai, what a great example of the process you're enacting, Rob. I often try to remind myself, especially during the times where I feel more insecure or vulnerable or like I'm being too much. But the more you open up to the world, the more the world opens up to you. DJ Wai on the ones and twos today. So again, the quote, the more you open up to the world, the more the world opens up to you. So Rob, today was another day. We invited you to open up to our audience. And in doing so, again, with Adam's dad, I don't know how typical or not it is for him to share with that level of detail about something from decades ago now. But you helped open a door for that to be more possible for him today. What a gift. And good work. I'm really proud of you, dude. It's really fucking awesome.
Thank you. And thank you, Jordan, specifically, for our conversations are seared in my mind and really did change my perspective on myself and on what I wanted to put into the world. And that no doubt had a direct correlation to bringing what is now Sad Dads Club to what it is. And my just courage I found to kind of jump the ship of stability, so to speak, in corporate America and do something that I felt was really needed out there, and to consider what I have in my deck. And when I looked in that, I felt confident in doing so. And to Wai and to Neil, this is exactly what helps us get the word out there. There has been no more powerful tool for us than word of mouth, and the opportunity to have a platform where I can speak more about my story and more about the impact of Sad Dads Club is so crucial. So I really appreciate you all giving me the airtime to share a bit more about Sad Dads Club.
You know, we always aim to perhaps like sort of navigate interesting topics, you know, and this is one that I don't think we would have ever imagined like we would be able to talk about at any sort of like length. So we really appreciate having you, somebody who's dedicated their lives to this, to be able to come on to like provide this episode for us. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you want, leave some feedback for us over on our Discord, postwrestling.com/Discord, where you can access. And then maybe you through that, you'll be able to find links to the Sad Dads Club Discord as well, unless there's like a maybe easier place for people to find that, Adam or Rob. I mean,
we have our invitation link expires every 24 hours as our security measure. So reach out to me directly, whether through our website or Instagram. Again, rob@saddadsclub.org. I'll get you that invite link.
Excellent. Okay. We'll be back next month, I imagine, guys.
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah, we picked a date. Rob, are you anticipating this AEW pay-per-view on Sunday?
Yes.
Okay.
Good enough.
There it is.
Right.
I am
on the record.
Yes.
Now we have fulfilled the requirement for this to exist on the Wrestling Podcast Network. That's it. Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Neil, and thank you, Jordan. We shall talk to you guys again next month. Take care. Bye-bye.